Minglaba everyone! I know it's been a really long time since I've done one of these and I apologize for the lack of videos for anyone waiting. I promise I have a valid legitimate excuse for this. This summer has just been really hectic for me lately because of a lot of exams, and unfortunately there are those type of exams that the marks you get in them will decide your future. So I guess I've just been totally paranoid and trying desperately to stuff my brain up. The good news is I'm finally free, at least for a month. By the time this video gets uploaded, I probably won't be free anymore because school. So this time I planned something a little different. Usually I stick to reviewing one book at a time, but this time is special because I'm reviewing two books. How is that gonna work, I hear you ask? Well, I'm going to be reviewing one book called Beauty and the Beast and the other called Beauty and the Beast. But aren't the stories gonna be the same? Well, technically yes. However, what we have to understand here is that the Beauty and the Beast, most of us probably know, is the Disney cartoon. However, Disney wasn't the one who came up with the story. To get this, they pulled from an old tale which was written in 1740, which was a really long time ago, like 3 centuries ago. That was when the Industrial Revolution was just starting and people decided machines were cool. So anyway, the same tale was retold again by another writer and rewritten again by another writer and again and again. As such, many versions of the tale exist all throughout Europe. You see where I'm going with this? Here's a little bit of context. Both of these tales were written by Disney the Mouse, one being titled The Original Tale and the other being titled as Book of the Film. I'm going to be exploring how both of these books shine in their own way because both were amazing reads. Listen on to the tale as old as time. You guys know what's coming. The theme, the plot, the writing style, the characters, and age appropriation. General overview of the first book, Beauty and the Beast, Book of the Film. We start our story with a ball that the prince organized. All the ornaments decorated in his castle were absolutely precious and gorgeous. His ball was attended by the most beautiful people of the world, but he, the prince, was the most beautiful and handsome of them all. At least he thinks he is. The ball was interrupted by a sudden knocking, and a poor woman came into the castle, relishing in the warmth it offered. The prince was absolutely furious that this peasant entered into his ball completely uninvited, and thus decided that the correct way to respond to this was to simply not respond at all and shut the door in her face. I mean, I do understand all the jazz about stranger danger and all, but couldn't you have given her a shed or a small cottage to live in? You're a prince, you have extra room, and you clearly saw the storm out there. Anyway, after making what is a horrible choice, the poor woman turned out to be a powerful enchantress who cursed the prince to become a beast forever, and for some reason the rest of the household's death to become objects. However, she gave him a rose, telling him that if he finds love before the last petal falls, then the hearts will be broken. I'm sure we already know this. Now we head to a different perspective, a beauty's perspective or Belle's perspective. Technically, Belle means beautiful in French, so that's the same thing, isn't it? Anyway, Belle wakes up to another day in her village of Venaf, in which she described the events as mundane and boring. This was set in a time period in which girls weren't allowed to read, and this village didn't actually encourage reading and was simply put narrow-minded. Belle was unfortunately a bookworm and was seen as a bit of an outcast compared with the rest of the village. There she carried out her usual routine, doing her errands, checking out new books with Père Hobart, and spending a little bit of time with Agathe, the village beggar woman who had no home or job. However, it wasn't very long before she was interrupted with the entrance of
Left in his jib like Gaston.
As a specimen, yes, I'm intimidated.
Gaston was a misogynistic, self-absorbed man who was beloved by the town because he happened to have fought in a war 12 years ago and because he happened to have the best genetics. He wanted Belle as his wife because he believed that she was the most beautiful girl in the village and decided that she was a worthy prize to have as a spouse, harassing her, pushing her into uncomfortable situations, and so on. The story really started when Belle had to say goodbye to her lovely dear old dad Maurice, who was going to have to go to a few towns over to a large market in order to sell his music boxes, carrying them in a cart and taking Philippe, their horse, with him. He would ask Belle what kind of person she would want, and she would always answer, a red rose, courtesy of a painting of her and her now deceased mother. However, unlike usually this time, Maurice got caught in a horrible storm and had inadvertently gotten lost in the dark forest where he was attacked by a pack of ravenous wolves. This meant that his cart got destroyed and all his music boxes with it, which was terrible for business. However, his sweet, intelligent little Philippe caught him and they tore off, hoping to get as far away from the wolf as possible, and came across a rather curious building. At first, he was really pleased with the hospitality, the food, and the warm fire crackling, until he realized that this castle was inhabited by cutlery that talks. As he rushed to leave, he remembered that he had to get Belle a red rose and decided to take a quick break to get one, which was predictably his downfall, and he was captured by the beast. He was a tad bit touchy about the topic of roses. And so Philippe ran back home, alerting Belle, who in turn was prompted to go find her father, leading her to the castle. There she found Maurice was held prisoner by the beast, and in a pivotal moment took her father's place. And it was then that Belle and the beast's destiny intertwined, and the two realized there was more to each other than they realized. Now for the second book, Beauty and the Beast Lost in a Book. This book, unlike the first one, starts off with a very different prologue and a very different person pulling the string. We meet two sisters playing a game of chess. Their names were Love and Death. I'm already hooked. And these two sisters were talking about usual sibling stuff like fate and death, and of course the focus of the story, Belle and the Beast. There they made a bet on 3 million gold coins to see if the two would fall in love with each other before the timer runs out. Nothing like gambling on people's life on a good Sunday afternoon. We then start the story with Belle, after she had received an entire library from the Beast as a gift, which was probably the most wonderful thing he could have done, at least to Belle. She, with the help of her friends, worked to make the library her place of sanctuary and comfort. After a gruesome day of hard work, the housefolk understandably scattered away as quickly as possible, but not before inviting Belle to have dinner with them. Belle agreed but decided to wait a bit to look around her new library and found that there was a door this entire time. Don't tell me we missed an entire room. She opened the door to a seemingly normal room with a desk and a table on the left on which laid a book called Nevermore. Feeling curious as to why this book wasn't shelved, she picked it up and dropped it immediately because oh my god, that thing has a heartbeat. The book started to enlarge and grow bigger until it was bigger than Belle and opened its pages, out of which words streamed out. But what most captivated Belle was the scene on the pages, in which there was a party with people dancing, food, and music playing out of the pages. A bit cautious but still captivated, Belle weighed her odds of entering the book and decided yes, she will go there. There she met a well-learned, witty man named Henry who led her to the Countess hosting the party and was totally not death in disguise. The Countess was kind and told Belle she wanted to write a story so that she could experience whatever she wanted. However, while they were eating, a few beetles messed up the food and spelled 3 things eaten, love lies beaten, 3 things lost, a dreadful cost. Is this what they call foreshadowing? Belle was a bit shaken by this realization, but didn't deter her that much, and after returning to Castle to realize how bleak her living conditions are, she found herself returning to Nevermore again and again. However, each time she returned, it seemed a little bit harder to leave, as if the book doesn't want her to. Alright, now that we have those lengthy introductions out of the way, let's go to the opinion section. The theme. Both books detailing the tale as old as time holds elements of looking inward and appreciating what is inside and not to fall prey to superficial outer appearances like the beast's monster form or the Countess's charm. The first book holds elements of hardship and trying to find love even when things are difficult and the rewarding feeling that comes with accomplishment. The second book focuses more on outer appearances and how if you desire something easy, you might just dig your own grave. It really does a good job of giving across the message, and for that I give this a huge thumbs up. The plot. Considering that these two books had the same premise, it was interesting to see the differences they had and the similarities they share. The first book followed the usual storyline of the famous Disney cartoon and did a good job of adapting the events of the film, considering the different tools that had to be used. The second book is equally thrilling, if not even more so, for this book includes mysterious plots, external factors, and even a fight with Death herself. Who wouldn't like that? The plot makes sense, is fun to read, and leave you hanging for more. The writing style. It's not the most unique writing style out there, but I still really enjoyed it because even though it doesn't even try that hard, it's still really easy to read and follow the story from one sentence to another without you becoming confused at any time. The characters. Belle's an unusual girl. She is headstrong, daring, brave, and adventurous, traits that led her to take her father's place and eventually break the cards. She is also headstrong and lets her heart lead her, which often clashes with the Beast. Having two stubborn personalities clash with each other means that they eventually find common ground, even if it takes a very long time to find that common ground. She is also sometimes a little bit reckless and sometimes lets her emotions cloud her judgment, a weakness that was heavily explored through in the second book and allowed Belle to grow over the course of her story. The Beast was someone who was spoiled, selfish, and unkind, and he paid dearly for that by being turned into a beast. After the death of his kind mother, he was left to the mercy of his ruthless father, who shaped into the person or beast he became. He was a person who was angry at himself, yet take it out on others. Yet, despite all that, he learned to be kind when he wants to be, and just started to genuinely care for Belle and her safety as the story goes on. Although the rest of the characters aren't as important as the first two, they still serve the role. Lumiere was a romantic candelabrum who just wanted to make certain situations lighthearted. In contrast, Cogsworth was a stickler to rules, who often find himself at odds with Lumiere. Even though he's mostly played for comic relief, he's still an entertaining character to see play out. Miss Potts is an endearing character, not just to Chip, her own child, but also acts as a mother figure to Belle. She is also not as nervous of the Beast as the rest of the staff and is unafraid to say unpleasant things to his face. Chip, her child, is dear to her. He's an innocent character who doesn't know why circumstances has befallen him the way it did, but is willing to look passive in favor of being optimistic and play, like children always do. And of course, we can't forget Belle's dad, Maurice, as well, who is a sweet, obedient old man who always wants Belle to look out for herself. He really listens to Belle when she wants to tell him about something, and I just think that's really sweet. Now we can go into the characters that weren't exactly present in both books. One glaring exception is Gaston in the second book. Despite being especially prevalent in the first book and the movie, he seems to be only getting a few mentions in the second book. And he's a really good character because even though he's a self-absorbed man who believes that everything belongs to him, he's a good parallel to the person the Beast could have been if before he had been turned into a beast. That might be the reason why the Beast didn't have as much of a role in the second book, because the main antagonist Gaston wasn't there. Instead, it was Death, the manifestation itself. Her motivation? She wanted to win a bet against her sister Love. All in all, she's what you would have expected from the physical manifestation of Death. Cruel, cunning, and deceptive. She doesn't care about what she had to do as long as it ended with her getting the better end of the deal. She also has really nice design, even if we've only ever heard it described and never drawn. She always wore black, reminiscent of a funeral, and her skin is deadly pale, almost as if she was devoid of blood, and almost as if she wasn't living. Her sister Love is also quite nice. She's what you would expect from the physical manifestation of love. She's sweet, optimistic, and cares for all things living. However, like her sister, she also hates losing. She's vicious in her own pursuits, and we can really demonstrate her power in the everyday scenes of the world, and it's really exciting, even though we never got to see it in action. Her design is also quite interesting. Her skin is warm brown, like the earth and soil, and she wears living creatures on her body. So I guess love even won over disgust in the end. And of course, these two sisters were completely devoid in the first book. The external factor in that book was the Enchantress. I don't really have much to talk about in terms of personality, but considering the magic wasn't exactly the focus, I'll let it slide. Now it's time to head for age appropriation. From what I've scoured up, the first book is perfectly fine for anyone who is older than 3 years, which is reasonable considering anyone younger than 3 years wouldn't be able to read it, unless they're a child prodigy or something. The second book, Wish of Scar of Ron Mason, is said to be good for people between 10 and 14 years. Now, I don't really believe in an upper age limit when it comes to reading books. I still read Nighttime Story, clearly meant for children just because it's fun. So, I believe that anyone older than 7 or 8 years would be able to read this book. And with that, I end this review video. If one or both of the books are to your liking, then what's stopping you from cozying up in your own personal library? Enjoy!